First of all, perspective is putting everything on a line. Now this line right here, I'm going to draw this line. Now I brought me a straight edge along. Those of you that are going to follow along may want to have a straight edge, okay? You don't have to use one, but you know, just for the sake of making it a little easier to work with, sometimes it's good to have one. All right, now then, this is called the horizon line. Okay, and I'm just going to label it HL for horizon line. Now everything in life, when you paint, has to have a horizon line. If you don't have a horizon line, that means you're either way above it looking down, or you're way below looking up and all you see is sky, okay? But 99% of the time, those of us who are fine art painters will have a horizon line, and that's the line that you either put things above or below to create different perspectives. And let me give you some examples on some basic shapes first. Okay, let's just play like this is the horizon, and obviously that's where your eye and this is the ground, this would be the sky. That's where your eye eventually meets. That's why they call it the horizon. Now on that horizon line somewhere, you're going to have what they call a vanishing point. Now the vanishing point is the point where all lines on a perspective object merge. Now this is going to sound a little confusing to some of you if you haven't had much training in this, so just pay close attention and I promise you it'll all fall into place. All right, now let's just say for instance you have a house that's sitting over here and you want to perspect it back this direction where you see the left side of it. Well, what one point perspective means is this, that you're standing in the front of a building. Okay, let's just draw, say, the front of it here, and be sure that part of it's below the line and part of it's above the line. Now it could be sitting down here further or up closer to the line or even right on the line for that matter, okay? But what we're going to do here is perspect this side. Now, whatever side you're perspecting, that's the side the vanishing point is on. For instance, now here I'm standing right in front of my building, slightly to the left of it, so I'm going to see the left side. Now, depending on where I put my point has a lot to do with how intense the angle is, okay? How tall the building is, that's a lot to do with how intense the angle is. And sometimes your vanishing point, when we put on here, may be way out here, and you may have to add an additional piece of paper or something to get it correct. Now, this is only to get you a rough idea how to get things correct. I'm going to show you some do's and don'ts. I'm just first go through here with the basic. One point perspective is where you're only perspecting one side of a building or an object. For instance, let's say I put my vanishing point way over here. Just put a little point right there. Now you take your straight edge, if you want to use a straight edge, and you go from the top of your square, just make a little dotted line. Don't make a solid line because you're going to have to erase some of that. Then you go to the bottom of it, okay? Now there is the perspected side of your building, all right? Now, how wide or long the building is really determined on what subject your reference material you're looking at. You may have a photograph of a building that you're trying to duplicate and you're saying, oh, gosh, how do I get it? Well, all you do is take a look at your building. Now this building could be real long. If it is, my end of my building would be here. If it's short, it may be here or anywhere in between, all the way back to the point. Of course, that'd be a very long building if it went all the way back to the point. That's where your eye eventually merges and everything just disappears into this vanishing point, okay? That's called the vanishing point, so we label that a VP. Now, I'm just going to make a length of my building just for the heck of it, just so I'll have something, and I'm going to put it right there. So all I do is make a dot there, and I make the same length here, and I'm just estimating. And then I draw a line up and down here that's parallel with this line. Then I can make this solid and this solid. And there I have the perspected side of this particular cube or this square or whatever it is. That's perspecting one side of a building. That's why we call it one point. You have one point. In a minute we're going to talk about two-point perspective, and that's where you have only the corner of the building and you perspect two sides. That's where you're standing right at the edge of the building, the corner, and you can see down both sides. Here you just see down one side, but the front of it is non-perspective. In other words, it's just square. Now, I recommend that even though you have this video and you can run it 100 times, I really recommend that you take notes as we go, just like you're in a lecture, okay? Here's some points to remember. Number one, All non-perspected opposite lines are parallel. Let me explain what that means. I'll give you an example. The other day I was teaching a workshop and we were doing an English setting where we had several old buildings in there. And it was interesting to walk around the class and see everyone had a different angle to every building, had a different roof line, and some of them looked like they were falling off. Well, here's how you keep your buildings to standing up straight. This line, and this line are all opposite to each other, correct? Those are non-perspected lines. If they go forever and ever, they never touch each other. Okay, those lines are non-perspected, parallel lines. They will always stand up straight, and they'll be parallel with not only each other, but with the sides of the canvas or paper, whatever you're working on. That's one way to judge if your building is standing up straight. Make sure all opposite, non-perspected lines are parallel. Here's another set of non-perspected parallel lines. This one and this one. If those lines kept going forever, they would never touch each other. They're non-perspected. They're square, straight in front of you. So those are opposite. They will be parallel not only with each other, but with the top and the bottom of your canvas. That's another way to help get your building to stand up correctly. All right? Very important to remember that. The only thing we're perspecting right now is just this side here. Excuse me. Once you've established the perspected side of your building, then you can start adding the doors and windows. Excuse me. Now, on the non-perspected side, everything is easy to calculate because you don't have any perspective. You're just using opposite lines. For instance, say I want to put a door in the front. Well, all I do is make a line that is parallel to the side lines and the canvas, and then the top line is parallel to the top and bottom, and the opposite line is parallel. There's your door. Now, folks, this is just a study because every building is different. It could be an old shack. It could be a skyscraper with several stories. A lot of different possibilities here. The window is just a square or a rectangle, but all opposite lines are parallel. That's how it looks like it's standing up straight. If you put more windows up here, maybe some smaller ones. Okay, everything is square. That's easy to figure out. So always know that when you're doing one-point perspective, the front of your building is going to be square. Easy to fix because everything's opposite and parallel. Now, to do the top of the building, all you do is this. You find the center of it, okay? You look at your reference material. Now, in just a second, I'm going to show you something here on a painting I'm working on. The perspective on this little church is over this on this side instead of this side. But to get the top of the building, see, the front of my building is non-perspected. All right? I'm going to show you this again in a minute, so we'll sit tight on that. I find the center. I kind of look at my photograph and say, okay, here's how tall the peak is. You can even measure it if you have to, and you put a point right there. Make sure it's right in the middle. Then all you do is connect the dots. Okay, so that's how you get the or the front of your building correct, at least in terms of the roof. Now, what about this side over here? Here's the way you perspect the roof. It's automatic. Once you understand the basic principle of perspective, it just goes like that. Once you reach this point, you take that point and you go right down to your vanishing point. That will make the perspected part of your roof correct automatically without you having to work at it. Okay, so you take that point, you draw a line, just sort of a broken line again, just to kind of find it. All right, now that's how you would perspect the roof line, but then you're missing the back line. What in the world are we going to do about that? Well, folks, keep in mind, this point's already established. We know it's going to start there, but where's it going to go up here? And this is where a lot of people get in trouble. Keep in mind that this roof line is opposite this one, and it's non-perspected. Now, don't misunderstand. We're creating a parallelogram. It's on the perspected side of the building, but they are non-perspected lines. The only lines that are perspected, and everybody pay attention, are the lines that go to the vanishing point. This one, and this one. Got that? This line and this line are not perspective. If they went forever, they would never touch each other. They are parallel to each other. They are not parallel with the sides of the canvas, so you can't use that as a judge. You just take this line, okay? You make this line parallel to that one, and then your roof is perfect, okay? So what you do is this. Sometimes you just sort of ad lib. In other words, let me show you what not to do. Your line wouldn't go there. It doesn't look right. So you erase it, and you want to make that line parallel to this one. Fill in your line. And there you have a perfectly perspected roof, okay? That line are opposite, so they're parallel to each other. Then your roof is perfect, okay? Now then, you say, well, how do I put a chimney or some doors or windows on the perspected side? Folks, it's so simple. All you have to do is remember one thing. Establish the farthest window or door first. Get the height of it with a line and then perspect it. Let me show you. Say, for instance, I have a door here. Now, by the way, this is probably not a very practical building, but for the sake of teaching you perspective, that's why I'm using it. I will now establish the height of my door by looking at whatever reference material I'm looking at. Maybe I've got a photograph. Put a point. I will draw the line because this line is not perspected. See, it's parallel. It's up and down. It's vertical. It's parallel to the sides of the building and the sides of the sides of the canvas and the sides of the building. So this line now, this line, this line, this line, this line, this line, and this line are all opposite each other, so they're parallel. All right? Remember, all opposite non-perspected lines are parallel. Now, how do you perspect the top of the building or the door? Well, now you go from the top of the door down to your vanishing point. See? This will help you get the exact perspective on that door. Draw some little dotted lines. Okay? Now you have to look at your reference material, folks, and when you're perspecting something, they are never as wide as they are if you're facing them. This is a rule. Now, there's no formula for this. Just know that anything that's on the perspective side, because you're looking at it at an angle, it's going to appear narrower and smaller, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. So now you decide how wide your door is, put another dot, and you draw a line down. You only stay inside the perspected line there. You only go down to the perspected line of the building. There's your door, perfectly perspected. The top of it is exact. There's no way you can goof up as long as you use your vanishing point. Now, what about windows? Well, you already have the top line in there, okay? So you don't need to necessarily put that unless you put the window up here. Then you just put a dot, draw a line, and then you perspect it down to there, and then you fill in the rest of it. Let me show you. For instance, if I want a window here, I just scoot over, say all 1/4 of an inch, and I draw however long I want the window to be. All right? I don't care how tall you make your window or how square or how skinny. You just get the length of it, but you can't go beyond the vanishing or that point, right? That line, the vanishing line. You have to stay on it. Then, however long you make it, wherever you end it, that's when you vanish. You draw another line from the bottom of the window to that point. Just so we'll have a reference here, let's go ahead and make a line in there. Okay, now I can put as many windows in there as I want to, as long as I stay within the two vanishing lines. Okay, so here's the first window. I stay within those lines, but you see this line and this line are parallel because they're opposite. Now I scoot over about 1/4 of an inch and I make another window. Excuse me, battling the allergies again. There's my windows. They're perspected. Now, of course, you would erase all of your guidelines and you get everything out of there, and now you have a perfectly perspected building. So easy to do, folks. You cannot go wrong as long as you understand that all lines, when you finally establish the height of your object, go down to your vanishing point. You decide how wide it is, make one parallel line, and then you just fill in the rest. It's so simple. What about adding a chimney? Well, let's add one. First of all, depending on where you put it, has a lot to do with how you configure it. But let's say we go up here and the chimney's right in the center. All right, well, we know looking straight on, just like the house, it's square. Everything's opposite, and so it's parallel. You don't have to perspect the front of the chimney. So let's do this. Let's draw the front of the chimney like this. All right, and it's going to be sticking right there. I just dropped my charcoal. All right, we'll get some more. So there's your front. And of course, this chimney can have all kinds of little things on it, but just get the basic chimney drawn in there, okay? And it's going to hug the top of the building there. You could have set it back a little bit if you wanted. Now, you go from the corner of it there, not this back corner, because that corner is not perspected. You go to this corner and you draw a line down to your vanishing point. Just like this. Okay? Now, you go to the bottom of your chimney, right there, and you draw another line. That's how you get the bottom of your chimney correct. Then you just draw however wide the chimney is. You draw a parallel line, just like that, and you fill it in. Of course, you can shade it in and everything like that if you want to. Then you erase all of your guidelines, folks. After you get everything in, that's why you do them very subtly. Get rid of all your guidelines. There you have a perfectly perspected chimney, perspected doors, perspected windows, perspected roof. And then you can do other things. Give you a real neat little tip on how to put bricks or shingles on your roof and get them perfectly perspected. This is one of the biggest problems most people have. Say I want to put bricks on this building, okay, or siding, vertical siding, or horizontal siding, I mean. All you do is look at your subject, whatever it might be, and you see how wide the boards or the brick rows are. And you just do this. You put little points right on this corner right here. And you, okay, if they're a ½ inch wide, you make them a ½ inch apart, all the way down. Or maybe they're only a ½ inch apart. You know, that's probably a little wide for bricks. Those would be more like big stones. Then all you do, each point, you go back to your vanishing point. And you make a little line right there like that. And I won't go all the way down because I've got so much to show you. I want to save some time here. But all you do is go to each point and draw a line. And that, as long as you stay within those lines, then when you draw your bricks or your siding, it will be perfectly perspective. But I want you to notice something. Above the horizon line, this line here, the lines go at an angle downward. Below the horizon line, the angle of the lines begin to go upward, okay? So if you're not using the vanishing point and the horizon line as an exact science to get this, just kind of use it in your head. That's what I do. I very rarely have to do this anymore. After a period of time, you finally just get used to it, and you don't need to do this. But see how the wood slats or the whatever those are, they go, everything goes up towards the point. Same thing on the shingles. Now, by the way, if you're going to put bricks in here, remember the lines that go up and down are non-perspective parallel lines. So every one of these has to stay parallel to the sides of the building. Don't lean them. Boy, that is a common problem. Keep those non-perspective lines parallel. Folks, I'm going to just warn you and warn you and warn you. If you get the basics down, you'll learn how to keep your buildings and all the components and all the amenities, everything you add to them, everything will look correct and like it's standing up instead of like it's falling over. Keep all of these lines parallel with everything else that's opposite to it. Okay? Now, if you do the front of the building, all you do is run these straight across. You can't goof there because it's not perspective. Just be sure that they're parallel with the top and bottom of the canvas. Okay? Now, if you do shingles, you do it just like this. You decide how wide each shingle row is, and you put little dots all the way down on this line right here. Okay? And then you just run a line all the way down from each dot up to your shingle. And that's how you get the rows correct. Then there's no guesswork. The reason I like to show people this is because very few of us have the knowledge or the eye to do it without help. And then once you learn it, then it's easy. But you see, if you just follow like that, then you can get all your little lines in there correct, and then you can go in there and kind of play with it. You know, you can put the little L shape to suggest shingles or whatever it is you're going to do, but at least all your basic lines will be in correct perspective, and it looks like it's all falling into place, and it doesn't look like your building was, misconstructed. So that's the basic concept for doing perspective in one point. Okay, in other words, where you just see one side.